Hi, this is Sarah Mikesell with the Poultry site, and today we're here with Dr. Tom D'Alfonso. He is the Worldwide Animal Nutrition Focus Area Director for the U.S. Soybean Export Council. Thanks for being with us today, Tom.
Great to be here, Sarah. I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you. Thanks so much, and it's great to talk to you again. Today, we're going to talk about layer and egg production. And so I'm excited to dive into this. Layer producers and their nutritionists spend enormous energy managing feed cost. But is feed cost actually the right performance metric for a layer operation? And what happens to the conversation when you shift the focus to revenue per dozen instead?
I'm so glad you asked that question. You know, layer producers are actually focused on profit. And profit means that you want revenue to be higher than costs. And so, yes, costs are important, but actually revenue is more important. And there are important ways to get higher revenue in layer operations that involve choosing soybean meal derived from U.S. soy.
Egg buyers, whether retailers or food service customers, price and specify by size and grade. What does a producer actually lose in dollar terms when a percentage of eggs shift from large or extra large into medium or downgrade categories? And how controllable is that risk through nutrition?
Very good. So nutrition is one of the most important factors that contribute to the variability of animal protein performance. So in the case of layers, that means egg size distribution. And I actually studied this topic for my dissertation. One of the topics I'm most happy to talk about many years ago, but I think it's still relevant. And that is understanding what the sources of variance are in your operation and focusing on quality control will bring payback. And that payback comes in the birds producing eggs more uniformly, reaching that target weight range. If they're too small or too big, they don't get a premium value per unit. When they are more uniform, then you get more revenue. And that's why having consistent sources of important ingredients in the diet contribute to that.
When it comes to actually though dollar terms, is there like a standard or is it just all different depending on who you're working with?
It is all different, but I like using a nice round number, a penny a pound or 2 cents give or take per kilogram of egg mass produced. And that is substantial. But
Right.
it comes from not just egg production, but egg size and getting those target weights correct. So you don't want to waste nutrients. You don't want to try to reduce variability by overfeeding. That's going to increase that cost factor. What you want are for the essential ingredients to provide the nutrients that you expect. And there's no better source of consistently highly digestible amino acids in the right proportions, the right bundle, than soybean meal derived from U.S. soy.
One thing that's unique about laying flocks is that producers have performance data every single morning. How does that change the way you think about nutritional consistency? And what does it mean for detecting the cost of ingredient variability before it becomes a serious problem, Tom?
One of the reasons I enjoy working with layers for research purposes is that if you're collecting individual eggs just about every single day, you have lots of degrees of freedom, as statisticians like to say. And that means you can conduct really good research on how the performance of those layers is being affected by changes in temperature in the barn, by changes in lighting, but also changes in the diet. And when you have highly consistent, digestible amino acids and metabolizable energy, you have much more consistent performance. And when you get an ingredient that does not have the nutrients that are expected, you can see it in animal performance, in this case, in egg mass production, as an indicator of the factors that influence profitability and performance.
When nutritionists talk about standardized allele digestibility of amino acids, that's a technical concept. Can you translate it for a producer? What does higher or more consistent digestibility mean in terms of what's actually happening inside the hen? And why does it matter for your bottom line?
Okay, so you want the nutrients to be digested by the animal in the gastrointestinal tract and absorbed and used for productive means, whether that's an essential amino acid or calories. You don't want them going to the bugs in the digestive tract. You want them going
Right.
to the beast, as we say. Feed the beast, not the bugs. But actually, it's a complex system. The digestive system and the microflora work together. A healthy digestive system means you have better digestibility. And that ileal, that standardized ileal digestibility that you spoke of is very technical, but it means a precise place in the gastrointestinal tract where most of the absorption of the nutrients has already occurred. And so you want to measure how much digestibility there is in a feed ingredient by looking at how much went to the animal as
Right.
opposed to the bacteria in the large intestine.
Research comparing soybean meal from different origins has shown meaningful differences in amino acid digestibility, not just at the average level, but in how much that digestibility varies from batch to batch. Why does variability matter as much as or more than the average digestibility level when you're formulating a commercial layer diet, Tom?
Very good. So let's first talk about the source of variance at harvest of soybeans as an example. In the United States, the soybeans are dried naturally in the field. They don't require mechanical drying. And in South America, typically in tropical climates, it's very high moisture, and you have to dry the beans before putting them in the supply chain. And this drying is imprecise. Typically, there's wood-fired burners that are drying, burning eucalyptus logs to provide that drying, and that's just actually adding variability because not all of it is dried well, and some of it's over dried and even heat damaged. Okay, so why am I saying all this about the beans and the harvesting from the farm? Is because when that meal is produced and gets to the animal, you can't really see digestibility by looking at it unless
Right.
it's an extreme example. The animal will tell you. And animals like consistent diets, and so do nutritionists, by the way. Nutritionists, when they see high variability, if they're measuring the quality of the nutritional quality of the ingredients batch after batch, if they have highly variable ingredients, they have to penalize those ingredients and reduce their assumptions about how many nutrients are in it. They can't count on those nutrients from batch to batch. Fortunately, for those nutritionists who are sourcing soybean meal derived from U.S. soy, they can rely on consistently highly digestible essential amino acids and metabolizable energy to formulate diets more precisely, to have less variability in that diet that reaches the animal, and the animal is able to convert that into, in this case, eggs much more efficiently. If there's a lot of variability, then the animal overcompensates by eating more feed, having worse feed conversion, and really costing the operation. So you may be tempted to buy a lower price ingredient, but if it's highly variable, you're going to be paying for it in terms of feed formulation cost or worse, animal performance.
Research has shown that the protein source used during pullet rearing, not just the laying period, affects egg quality outcomes, including shell strength and albumin integrity. How does that change the way producers and integrators should think about ingredient specifications during pullet development?
Oh, very interesting. I like thinking about all animal nutrition as being important to focus on getting the animal off to a good start. And for a broiler, that's the starter feed.
Right.
For other animals, it's always a starter. But in the case of layers, it's a very dynamic system because for about 16 weeks, you're raising the pullets to get them ready to start laying. And if they are not uniform, they're going to come in production at different times, and you're going to see an overall decrease in that peak performance. You can only reach peak performance if most of the birds in the operation are laying about an egg a day. And so you
Okay.
see production rates approaching 100%, certainly in the high 90s. But that's only possible if the pullets were raised with consistent, highly digestible nutrients in their diets and well-managed operations, including temperature and lighting and management and etc. But all else being the same, having a consistent diet is one of the most important factors when it comes to profitability. It's one of the biggest costs, but it's also the biggest source of the animal protein being produced. We're converting nutrients in the diet to eggs.
Layer operations supplying retail or food service customers in international markets are increasingly asked to document the sustainability of their supply chain, including their feed ingredients. How does U.S. soy's sustainability story connect to a layer producer's own business development and customer relationships?
Yeah, very good. I think the layer industry in particular is under the microscope as far as how the animals are raised and fed and handled, their well-being, what they're fed is in fact very important. And what I like about sustainability in terms of layer production is that we have the easiest way for a layer producer to document a reduction in carbon footprint is very simple. Adopt a preference for soybean meal made from U.S. soy. That choice provides a quantifiable and verifiable way of documenting reduction in carbon footprint. With our sustainable U.S. soy process, you can calculate the carbon footprint. You can compare that to other origins such as Brazil, Argentina, India, and what you see is that the U.S. soy has by far the lowest carbon footprint. And the reason has to do with a couple of things. One, our land use. We simply produce more soy with the same amount of land. We don't need to tear down rainforests to do so.
Right.
That's a simple answer. But the other is that the practices of the U.S. soy farmer are sustainable because they're business sustainable. It's a multi-generational family-owned farm by far. 95 plus, 96% of all soy produced comes from a family-owned farm. They don't want to waste the inputs to the soil or their management practices just to get a sustainability label. They do it because it makes business sense. And the result is a very consistent product with high nutrient levels because of the organic matter in the diet being high, in the soil, I mean, being high. That goes to the nutrient bundle in the soybean meal ultimately, and to the digestibility for the animals. So those animal producers can document carbon footprint reduction, but when their animals perform more uniformly, when they're less wasteful of feed, these things add up. And so you chose U.S. soy, you get an immediate reduction in carbon footprint because of that choice. You monitor animal performance and you get better feed efficiency. That's less feed wastage. That's another way of calculating sustainability. But guess what? It's all business sustainability because those are simply good business practices. Companies that adopt a philosophy of being sustainable tend to be better run businesses. They gather better data, they have better documentation, they have better quality control across their entire operation, and that leads to better profitability. It's business sustainable.
U.S. farmers' sustainable practices, precise nutrient application, and responsible land stewardship deliver the consistent, high quality crop your operation depends on, with exceptional year to year reliability in nutrient composition and digestibility. How do you explain that connection to a producer who is thinking about whether it matters where their soybean meal came from?
Well, you should look at where your soybean meal came from because soybean meal derived from U.S. soy is more consistent and it's higher in digestibility. And that means you can lower the cost of feed and improve revenue at the same time. And I don't think there's any other ingredient that can do that in their diet.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tom, for all the information today. I really appreciate it.
I enjoyed this conversation very much, Sarah. It's one of my favorite topics. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again, Tom. This is Sarah Mikesell with the Poultry Site.